Hey royalties, welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's your girl Sakina K. Golding, and today we're going to be having story time. With all the stuff that's going on in the media about sexual abuse, a lot of people who know me know that I have personally gone through a very extensive period of sexual abuse. So today I will be bringing my story to share and shed light on this thing that's happening to a lot of young children in the world. I hope that me sharing my story will hopefully show you a different perspective, will give you a different type of hope, a different type of drive to deal with this issue and to push forward. So my story is a story of redemption, pain, and renewness, because in all truth, I have been renewed from this pain. My first instance of sexual abuse happened when I was 5 years old. I had a grand uncle. His name was Colin, and he had a granddaughter. And he said the only way I could play with his granddaughter is for me to lay on his bed beside her. I've always been really obsessed with children from I was little, always wanting to take care of them, always asking adults where their kids, because I felt like I could be. It's almost like I was already a mother before I became a mother. I've always been a person who liked to take care of other people. And while I was laying on his bed, playing with his granddaughter, he touched me in my private area. And honestly, I could just remember the burning sensation. And I remember just getting up and running home because of it. At that time, it didn't really impact me, nor did it change my perspective on anything until I met my abuser, who would have been my abuser until I was 11. So I met him when I was 6 years old. My mom came to the States to, file for us, to make a better life for us. But while she was gone, I stayed with my stepfather. And at my stepfather's house, we had maids, so I wasn't always exposed to bad things. But being that I was there, sometimes he would allow the maids to go home on the weekends. And when they did, we had to go to his sister's house. And his sister had a boyfriend who seemed like a very upstanding person. He was very nice. He was very caring. So when I met him, he was always, asking me, did I need help with homework? He would buy me toys and, little things when he went out on town and he came back. He would be like, oh, I bought this for you. For one whole year, he was courting my mind. He was already training me to protect him, to guard him, because what he was about to do, he knew that if he was exposed, especially in Jamaica, they would kill him. They would chop him up and kill him in my country. So he knew that he had to make sure that I was fully guarded and guarding him. So for a whole year, it was as if he was courting me, making me feel like he was a father figure, seeing that I didn't have my real father in my life. And my stepfather, he was a workaholic, so he was always at work. He wasn't really home. And I remember when I turned 7, he took me to this place. We had like a big garden behind the house because back in the day, they used to raise oranges. So it was like an orange farm. And he brought me, back inside of the garden. There was like a big boulder in the garden, and he sat on the boulder, and he asked me to come over and sit with him. Now, normally I would sit on his leg with both my legs over one side of his lap. But for some reason this day, he told me to put my legs open over him. And I sat down because, I'm not really thinking, like he's going to do anything malicious. And he started telling me a story. And while he's telling me a story, he was kind of fumbling with his pants. But for some reason, I'm like, I wasn't thinking about that. And he took my virginity that day. I remember I wouldn't stop bleeding. And my step aunt, she heard me scream, and she came to the garden to see what's happening, and she was like, oh, dinner is ready or whatever. And I kept looking at her, and I'm crying, and he was holding my hand. And he wasn't even holding my hand in a way like, how parents sometimes hold your hand tightly. He was just holding my hand very gently. And I kept looking at her like, don't you see the blood running down my leg? Like, do you not see? And she pretended as if she didn't see anything. And this continued on for a very long time. When I was 9 years old, I could no longer walk up straight. I was walking like this. And my next door neighbor was the one who noticed it, that I couldn't really straighten out my body. And she said to the maid at the time, something is wrong with her. You need to take her to the hospital. Of course, I didn't want to go because I knew that going to the hospital, they were going to find out what was happening. When I got to the hospital, of course, because I had to go at that point, I was in excruciating pain. When I got to the hospital, the doctor told the maid, someone is having sex with this child and her body is not, adequate enough to be in that position. He actually said to her, because of what's happening to her, she will never be able to have kids. And I remember the pain in her eyes when she looked at me, wondering, like who's doing this, or like, why is this even happening? And they had to give me an injection, which was the most painful injection. To this day, I remember that injection because I started running and they held me down. They had to give me a penicillin shot in the butt. It hurt like crazy. And then I had to take pills. And the type of pills that they had me taking was, at the time, I did not actually understood what those pills were for. But now that I'm older, I now understood that I had a sexually transmitted disease that I had to be taking these pills for. When the maid saw that, she actually quit. And she asked me to run away with her to St. Elizabeth, which is a parish over from where I was. She was just like, there's no way you should be subjected to this. And I told her, it's okay, my mom is going to come. She's going to take me away from here. This is not going to happen forever. I had no idea at the time that what was happening to me was already changing me. I had no idea that it was already, transforming my mind. The next door neighbor started inviting me to church, so I used to go with her just to get away from being, by my step-aunt's house. So she used to go to church on Saturdays. So I was with her from Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I would go back home. I hated being around, my step-aunt. While I was still in the process of getting this disease out of my body, she actually came one day and she told me, I need to hurry up and get better before he leaves us. It really shook my core to know that she knew this entire time. She had all of this knowledge that this was happening to me. And as a child, she would subject me to an older man who was 35 at the time to do something like that to a child. Like, the fact that she was okay with it, and it's not okay. Like, it's not okay for people to let this happen to children. This is not okay. It is not cool. It's like people are so consumed with being with someone that they will subject their child to anything. You cannot do that. You can't subject your child to be in a situation that is not conducive for them. You have to remember that they're children, they're innocent. And when that innocence is broken, it changes them. And I had no idea how much it was changing me until I came to America. So this continued on until I was 11 years old. I finally come to America and I realized I hated everybody around me, everyone, because for 2 years, I felt like my body betrayed me. My body was fiending for something that I was against. My body was now, I was literally in a place where I needed his touch. I needed him to feel complete because I didn't feel that way anymore. It was something that I was so used to that my body, I went into a complete depression where I was missing something that I hated, and I didn't have anyone to help me. I didn't have anyone I could speak to. I didn't have anyone that I could tell them of what was happening to me. It was as if I had no help. Nobody knew, not even my mom. My mom didn't know. And it broke me. And when I was 12 years old, I attempted suicide. It didn't work, but I did try. I tried to take my own life because you think about that stuff. You think about, like, why did it have to happen to me? Why did it have to happen this way? I always tell my friends, like, you're so lucky that you still have your virginity, because I never had the privilege of saying, this is a person I want to give it to, and you should consider yourself a prized possession before giving yourself over to anyone. And if you've already been exposed to it like I was, it's so hard to value yourself. It's so hard to look at yourself in the mirror and feel beautiful, because everything that you knew as beautiful was taken away from you. And I'm just happy that I found God in the midst of all of that. I was able to see him through my pain, and he was able to lead me to a place where he made me understand this happened to you. And although the devil meant it for bad and evil, I'm going to turn it around for good. And that is why one of my favorite scriptures is the scripture that says all things work together for good for those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. And that is something that I believe in my heart, that I was called according to his purpose, and that he willed me to live. And because he willed me to live, I'm not going to stop encouraging people. Some days are harder than some. Some days when I hear the stories of what R. Kelly did to those little girls, it mortified me in some ways because I know how it felt to be alone. Because a lot of those women who are discussing these things still have not dealt with what happened to them. They haven't faced it. I had to face it, and I had to seek counseling. I went to therapy, and I'm still in therapy for it, because it's a lot to unbox. It's so many years of abuse. You have to start unboxing each year and looking at every year and seeing that you're not at fault, knowing that you didn't have that choice, knowing that you couldn't have done anything but listen to listen to yourself and learn how to love yourself, because you can't love anyone else if you don't love yourself. And I'm learning that every single day, how to value me, how to love myself, how to stand by my standards, how to set standards and not, let them consume me. One thing that I've come to realize is that this is something that is drastically plaguing our Black community. It's plaguing so many of our lives. And because of this continual abuse that has been passed down through the generations, a lot of us are walking around very hurt. We're walking around very defeated. A lot of us have low self-esteem because of this. And I'm telling you today that it doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to be subjected to those feelings anymore. All you have to do is accept that it was not your fault. You were not at fault. Accept that and look forward to, growing and learning how to love yourself. Because once you can love yourself unconditionally, you can love anyone else, and pretty much that is my message today. Forgive you, love you, and grow from this. Because what you went through, it didn't kill you for a reason. And because you survived it, you have to keep pushing forward. You have to keep going no matter what. You have to face everything like it's your last time facing it, because you went through the worst. And now it's time to live your best life, to be happy. But it starts with looking in that mirror and seeing yourself for who you are, loving yourself, and setting those standards and setting those boundaries and living by a standard that makes you happy. Because you cannot subject yourself to how or what those people did to you. Because if you do, you're only going to continue building on top of that pain. And you deserve so much more than that pain. You deserve to be happy. We deserve to be happy. Thank you guys for tuning into my channel. Again, this is Sakina K. Golding. Be blessed.